Live.
Hello, I'm Kevin Benedict, Principal Analyst with the Center for Digital Intelligence. And I want to thank all you guys for joining us today. I'm so excited to be partnering for this interview with the team from CIO Water Cooler out of the UK. And our special guest is both an author and former CIO with Microsoft, Jim DuBois. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Kevin, thank you.
So I'm connecting in here today for this interview from cloudy and very cold Boise, Idaho. Where are you at today, Jim?
I am in beautiful, sunny Seattle. One of our rare days of clear blue skies.
Are you serious?
Yeah, absolutely. It's gorgeous here.
Oh my, that's a special occasion. I'm sorry to keep you away from that.
Yeah.
So, Jim, you've had the opportunity to kind of be at the head as CIO of Microsoft and many, many years at Microsoft. So you've seen so much happen there. Let me just start out our discussion today and ask you a question about changing direction when you have a ship that big. Is a giant company like Microsoft, are they immune from the challenges of a digital transformation like a lot of other companies might struggle with?
Oh, absolutely not. And I would say, and I think it's evident in the world, that Microsoft has gone through a massive transformation in the last few years with Satya coming in as CEO and really had to make some significant culture changes within the company.
Now, can you highlight, what do you think the cultural why was there a cultural change given that Microsoft was already a technology company?
Well, so Microsoft has been a technology company, but really was resetting, even what the products were and moving to the cloud services from the packaged product. And there was a need for a huge cultural change within, not just in how products were delivered, but how people thought about products and how people engaged customers and even how the different teams work together. In a cloud environment, all the different services need to work together much more than they did in that packaged product world.
Wow. So you must have the opportunity, given your position, to speak to a lot of other CIOs. What are some of the biggest challenges that leaders of any large enterprise has to deal with it when it comes to fast-changing digital technologies and the need for transformation?
Yeah, I'll just echo the point. As CIO for Microsoft, my role as all of the different CEOs that we've had, including Satya, defined it, was really one that was, the example enterprise customer, and the role was set up to run our products, not or use our products to run IT, not in creating products or running any of the cloud services. So my role really was that example customer within and giving feedback to the product teams. And then, yes, talking to a lot of CIOs about their transformations, sometimes sharing examples of what we've done. Everybody that I talk to, one of the biggest points in the transformation is the people change and getting people's mind around this new pace that we need to move at, and all the things you have to do in a cultural change. That people part is just massive for a technical transformation.
Got it. Can you give us one or two kind of recommendations for how you do help a large group of people get that digital mindset?
Well, I think that it's really important to be purposeful about the cultural change that you want and help everybody see what that needs to be. And then we as leaders have to model that. Satya's done a fantastic job within Microsoft of modeling the new culture that he wants. And it's made a huge difference. So it has to come from the top, but it has to be a culture that the teams want to have as well, so that change can happen faster.
Wow. So you need to build a case that they'll buy into. Now, in your book, your recent book here, Think Like a Modern Day CIO, you talk about the concept of leverage the willing. What do you mean by leverage the willing to help with digital transformation?
Yeah, so anytime you're going to do a massive change, the all of the people that you're trying to bring with you, there's going to be some that resist, and there's going to be some that are kind of wait and see, and there's going to be some that are willing to jump in right away. And that's an opportunity for us as leaders to recognize what's happening with the willing that are modeling what the change needs to look like. And as leaders, we need to recognize that, use them as examples of what's good. And it means we can no longer recognize things that used to be good that aren't part of that culture that we want. So it's huge that we can have somebody that can be working on good examples that we can recognize as examples for everybody.
Wow, thanks for sharing that with us. So, setting culture aside and the people issues, what are some of the biggest kind of technology barriers and challenges companies face when they're trying to modernize themselves?
So I think that beyond the people issues, that there's actually some process things that are technology related, but in order for us to go fast, we have to have some guardrails in place to help make sure that we can empower the teams to run, but that they won't run off it scattered in different directions.
Mhm.
So having some real clarity on the goals and what success looks like, and then technology becomes the enabler. It's not about technology. And being within a technology company, it was important for us to make sure that we didn't just run after the shiny objects, that we had real business goals that were clear that we were trying to get to.
Thank you for that. So, one of the things that all of us are reading about all the time, and I know you're on the board of directors on various companies and involved with the local VC community there in the Northwest and in Seattle. So, automation, AI, machine learning, this is on the tip of all of our tongues. We're looking at it, we're studying the impact. How big is it going to be, Jim?
I I think it's huge, and we've been working on a number of capabilities with artificial intelligence to help us learn. And I think at the pace that we need to go, we need to have models that can learn with us as opposed to having to code everything in. So
Mm.
having a machine learning model that can learn based on the data that it's seeing is going to be critical for all of our business processes going forward if we're going to work at the pace that we need to go.
Oh wow, so Microsoft, we associate Microsoft with lots of code and lots of programmers and brilliant people. Now we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning that can actually do the coding and kind of take off on its own. How close are we to that?
So there are a lot of um, cases with artificial intelligence that are ready to go now. Anything where you're um, uh, recognizing patterns, or you're doing some model that needs to predict success. Those are simple for some of the algorithms that we have with machine learning today. There's other things that are going to be more complicated as we go, but the the opportunities today are ripe for technology right now.
Wow. So let me paint you a picture. You're in a boardroom, you've got 20 CIOs there listening to your sage advice. What would, how do you tell them how do they get started with artificial intelligence? Where do they look for those kind of easy opportunities to score some early wins? Where should they start?
So I think that there's a lot of places that are good examples. Marketing systems are some of the best today because of the volumes of data that we have and what we can look at. I will say that there's also some ethical and privacy things that we also have to pay attention to as we start doing this, because the models, because they can learn on their own, they have to still have a human element in them so that they don't go and start doing things that would be issues from a privacy perspective, or even getting into there's a whole bunch of ethic. You can find tons of ethical conversations happening about artificial intelligence today, ranging from, are we going to end up with self-aware machines like Skynet, which is, I think, not even a relevant conversation in the near future, but is AI taking away jobs, and how are you recreating new types of jobs as it does that? Those are all issues that have to be dealt with, in addition to leverage them to drive huge business value.
Yes, I just read an article about something like an initiative called Explainable, so AI, so Explainable Artificial Intelligence.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, where people just want to go back and say, okay, we've created a machine that can learn on its own, and it's got from point A to B to C. Now we need to be able to explain what rationale, what judgment it was using on its own to get there. And is that the result we actually want, or is that an unintended consequence?
Yeah, and I'll say, even in the GDPR regulations that are coming in Europe, part of that regulation is that you're no longer allowed to have your machines make decisions if you can't explain how they got to that decision. Right. So it's not just an ethical thing, that there's a regulatory compliance part of that. But it is one of the issues is, these models are becoming good enough now, and they're able to predict and make decisions, but they're not always able to explain how they got there. And there's some issues around that.
Yeah.
So the whole explainable concept of having another model that's watching your model to explain what it's doing is an interesting concept.
Oh, absolutely. So for places to get started, you mentioned marketing systems. Are there other low-hanging fruit for automation and artificial intelligence out there that CIOs should be looking at?
Yeah, I think every business process has a place where you can start using it today. I mean, for example, we even used it in our sales automation process, where we're able to look at historical opportunity data and predict the chance of success for a new sales opportunity that a salesperson had. And it helped them to start, prioritizing where they would focus to become more productive, and being able to bring better value to customers, because they weren't trying to convince them of things that weren't likely to be of value to them. So those kinds of models to predict the success of something are easy. The harder models are, how do you give advice to the salesperson of what do you do to improve the chance of success of a model that was predicted lower? And those are other opportunities. I think examples within that sales process that you could apply to almost any business process, to think about how you could improve the capabilities there.
Wow, that's brilliant. I was on a webinar yesterday with WorkFusion, and WorkFusion actually has free robotic process automation software now to let people play with it and get started to take information out of Excel spreadsheet and be able to automatically route and check it and do all kinds of super sexy stuff for free, just to get people diving into it. So from simple to complex.
Yeah, and I'm sure what they're after as part of that is the data to help improve their models. Because what is becoming even more important today is the data than the technology. And you'll find a lot of people, Google is a great example. They're giving away TensorFlow, they're giving away that stuff, but they won't give away the data that they're using in their models. Because that's becoming the value, as opposed to necessarily the technology.
Got it. So let's move on now to connected devices. So you have the Internet of Things, you have industrial Internet of Things. all of these sensor networks that gather information and bring it in at a very high level. You're back in that boardroom with CIOs. How should they be thinking about the Internet of Things and how it's going to tie into artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotic process automation, all these things? How do those two kind of work together?
So I will admit my bias here is towards software rather than hardware. To me, the whole Internet of Things is incredibly important, but it's only important from the perspective of I have a business problem I'm trying to solve. I'm going to use something like AI or automation to solve that, but I need data. So we talked about the importance of data, and that's where Internet of Things comes in. It's going to allow you to put sensors in places to gather the data that you need to solve those problems. It is incredibly important, but it's only important to get that data that's going to allow you to do the automation, to do the machine learning in models to improve your business.
Absolutely. I write about this subject quite a bit, and I call those blind spots. It's the part of your operations where there is no data coming in, and so you're not able to use some really key data. So then you start looking for ways of putting sensors out there so you then have the data that completes the picture that you can then use to automate a decision.
Exactly.
Brilliant. So, technology moving forward, Jim, where would you guide a room full of CIOs and say, you know what, you might not be paying attention to this now, but this is going to be something really big, and you really should be understanding today how this is going to be impacting your industry, your market, and your own ability to compete?
Yeah. So I think that it's going to be building off of what we've been talking about with having sensors and having AI models. The applicability of that is going to be much more broad. I mean, we're going to start seeing it show up in the things that are still on the hype curve today that are going to start becoming more and more real, with still human in the middle as a helping point. So things like there's a lot of buzz around autonomous cars and where that's going. I've seen a lot of people talking about when are we going to have these autonomous cars. I think that it's going to be a transition. As today there's cars that are already, I mean, you see the car that you can push a button and it'll do parallel parking itself. You start seeing more and more of that where the car is doing more things to help the driver long before it's a completely autonomous car, because there's still a bunch of ethical issues, as we were talking about. What if the brakes go out? Does the car crash and kill the driver, or does the car run over pedestrians? And I saw a study from MIT that actually polled people, and everybody thought that the car should crash and kill the driver. It was the driver that had the car, and you don't kill random pedestrians. But nobody would buy that car. So it becomes this issue. All the car manufacturers aren't going to build that car because that's not what people want to buy. But then, so the ethical part of what happens in AI is there. I think there's huge opportunities in the security space to apply AI as well. So you're going to see a lot more from those capabilities, and I think that's going to evolve to a world pretty soon where we completely eliminate passwords, and it's all fingerprint or facial recognition or something that isn't having to remember a bunch of different passwords. That's a huge user experience issue, but it's also a big security issue.
Oh yeah, just you and I connecting. We had to go back and remember different passwords, and I have on my phone, I have password vaults, and then you're like, it's a real hassle. I think I have over 100 passwords.
And I think relatively soon, and a couple of the startups that I've been helping with are working on solving this problem cross-platform. But getting rid of passwords completely is something that we should all be thinking about. How do we get there fast?
Got it. So you brought up an issue, but you skirted around it a little bit, Jim, earlier.
Mhm.
Is AI and automation, is it going to take away jobs or is it just going to move jobs? Where do you think that argument is going to play? How do you think it's going to play out?
So I think because there are a lot of places where machines don't really have morals, and you're going to have people in the middle as part of that, that there's going to be new kinds of jobs created for people in the middle of a lot of the automation that's happening. But it's the same argument that happened when the industrial revolution happened, when computers first came out, where everybody was saying all the jobs are going to go away, and what's going to happen. With back in the 1900s in the US, it was 40% of the economy was farming. 40% of the jobs were farming. To now it's less than 2%. 38% of all the jobs went away. But we found a bunch of new things that we could do and improve everybody's lives. But I do think there may be just like people argue that Moore's law will end at some point. There may be a place at some point where the new jobs that we're creating are slowing down. And I actually saw a quote the other day, and I'll have to find the source for you, but it used to be that necessity was the mother of all invention. They were saying that actually we've gotten to a point today where invention is the mother of necessity, where things are being invented and then we realize that we need them, or want is probably a better word, as opposed to the way it was before. A lot of the things that are being created and new jobs that are being created are more about lifestyle, or and you could argue whether Pokemon Go or Bitmojis are necessary, but people are creating them and people are using them, and that wasn't possible years ago.
Wow. And thank you for sharing that too, because that is certainly a controversial topic out there. I really look back to the shale, kind of the evolution of the shale industry, where, something wasn't possible and there were not jobs available, but suddenly new technology enabled new kinds of interaction with physical and geographic areas. And suddenly there's a massive boom in jobs. And I'm wondering if, the digitization of the world will open up all kinds of really interesting new opportunities of interacting, the interaction points between physical and digital objects.
I think there's huge opportunities. The worry of what's happening with AI is that it's actually impacting the kind of jobs that are in the middle, the middle, not really middle class, but middle education. So the kind of jobs where you have complex decision making and real expertise required are growing. And the kind of jobs that are just manual labor, where or you need more people interactions, some of like food services and things like that, are not being replaced, and probably won't be replaced by AI. But there's a middle that is being replaced with AI, and it has this issue of maybe bifurcating the economy and having less middle class and more upper and lower class. Yeah. That I think is also something that we've got to watch as stewards in our industry.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, I think there's not going to be a lack of challenges ahead of us. And I want to thank you so much, though, for your wisdom and your advice and your recommendations and guidance that you shared with us today. So thank you again, Jim.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the conversation and love to continue it.
And I would encourage everyone to download the book or buy the book, Think Like a Modern Day CIO by Jim DuBois. Thanks again, Jim.
Thank you.